You're listening to The Greater Loop, a podcast from the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. In each episode, we bring to you leaders who connect Houston to the world, from business to diplomacy, innovation to impact. This is where global conversation begins. Let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to The Greater Loop, a podcast of the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. Today, our guest is John Moseley. He's the Chief Commercial Officer for the Port of Houston and one of our 2025 global leaders here at the World Affairs Council. John, welcome.
Thank you, Marianne. How are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you for joining us. John, you oversee one of the largest foreign trade zones in the United States, the fastest growing port in the United States. Tell us a little bit about the Port of Houston.
Yeah, fantastic. Little known secret that we're actually the largest port in the United States. A lot of folks aren't aware of that. 309 million tons of cargo just in 2023. We've grown since 2023. The second largest port in the country is about 90 million tons or so, smaller than ourselves as number one. That's basically port number 5 and everybody below. That's how big the Port of Houston is. And when it comes to a specific segment, containers, which is what most consumers are most familiar with, we've been the fastest growing port for the last 10 years. Today, we're the 5th largest container port in the U.S., and we're growing at a compounded annual growth rate of 6.5, which is twice as fast as the second fastest growing port and nearly 3 times faster than all the top 10 put together. So a lot of growth, a lot of things happening in Houston, big port, and a lot of development.
We are bigger here in Texas, aren't we?
We are indeed, yes.
John, what makes Houston the biggest port?
The Port of Houston is the largest in the United States, and it's the largest in North America, mainly because of oil. It's 71% of the cargo that we do. And I had mentioned this in my comments that we're number 1 overall, but we're number 5 in containers, right? So when it comes to containers, which is what most people think of, because that's what's on TV, that's what's on the news, that's what is in the movies, we're number 5. LA, number 1, New York, number 2, Long Beach, California, which is right next to LA, number 3, Savannah, and then Houston, right? So then we're number 5, but we're the fastest growing of those 5. What makes us larger is because of all the liquid bulk cargo. So a lot of oil coming in that gets converted along the petrochemical cluster that we have here, which is the largest of its kind in the world, at least in the Western Hemisphere, gets converted into chemicals, plastics, diesel, gasoline, jet fuel, all those things that we convert oil into, that oil, that crude oil gets processed into different grades of gasoline, diesel, all kinds of different things. And it gets converted and it gets, for the most part, gets re-exported out. So a lot of it is chemicals and a lot of it is just liquid bulk. And then after that 71%, that 29% or 30%, that's your containers and your steel and your cotton and your stuff like that.
We still export a large amount of cotton?
We do.
Really?
Yeah, West Texas cotton is alive. South Texas cotton, Western Texas cotton, a lot of cotton getting grown. Yeah, absolutely.
Huh.
I mean, yeah, a lot of cotton.
Who knew?
Arizona, you got a lot of Delta cotton out of Tennessee and out of Mississippi, but then you have a lot of West Texas and South Texas cotton. And then you've got cotton coming out of Arizona and California.
Interesting.
But, good cotton coming out of Texas still, yeah. Number one export state for the last
really
22 years, I want to say. Out of the 50 United States, Texas is number 1. And out of the cities, I think it's been the last 10 years that Houston's the number 1 export metro out of the U.S.
Huh. Who knew? And John, tell us, what are the biggest imports and exports in and out of the Port of Houston?
Well, containers, I would say chemicals and resins, things that get converted from oil and gas. That's our number 1. And then followed by that it would be machinery and agricultural goods. And then on the import side, it's largely food and beverage and consumer goods. A lot of beer, a lot of food, a lot of beef from Brazil. We got a lot of beef coming up from Brazil. Yeah, I don't think it's the picanha cut, but it is good beef. It's really yeah.
We all know that the Port of Houston serves our local community. How far of an impact does the Port of Houston reach in our Gulf states?
It's mainly local. It's a great question, Leo. Yeah, it's mainly regional. It's mainly Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, and maybe to a lesser extent Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana. But it's mainly regional. 99% of what we do is by truck. So it's amazing. The other ports, which are larger than us, a considerable amount of what they do is by rail. To like interior markets and
Mhm.
markets outside of their local market. But the Texas market is so big that this port, that's almost all we do. And at 6.5% compounded annual growth rate, to be honest, we're not even that interested in doing anything outside of Texas and our local region because it's already such a high growth rate. It's hard to keep up with the infrastructure. And at the end of the day, our focus is really serving all the manufacturing and all the demand here in our backyard. We're here to support the Texas economy, and if that's keeping us busy, is busy enough, then so be it. And one day we'll see. If things start kind of slowing down a little bit, then we might start looking at doing more out of other places. But right now we don't. It's mainly local, and that's for containers. But if you think about the greater port and liquid bulk and oil, well, there's pipeline networks that are serving the entire United States. I mean, we have crude coming in from North Dakota. We have crude coming in from Canada. You have gasoline and jet fuel that gets piped all the way to the eastern seaboard. I mean, the energy connectivity for the greater port that includes the movement of those hydrocarbons and fuels and things like that is really nationwide, which really brings us to our biggest challenge. Our biggest challenge isn't really water, and it really isn't terminal infrastructure. Our biggest challenge is road and highway. Because
Yeah.
the number of trucks are growing so fast that we're doing a great job in being handling big ships safely. It's a very busy waterway. We do more deep water ships than the ports of Los Angeles and New York combined. It's
Mm.
how many ships we do. And they're, like I said, they're mainly tankers, right? Liquid tankers. But the water side, we're not too well. We're concerned about it, but we got that under control. The terminal side, we're building plenty of docks and wharves and things like that to ensure we're supporting growth. But the biggest challenge is ensuring that the roads and highways have the right kind of capacity. So we've got a number of different initiatives to kind of address that right now.
So, John, when I was with the Houston Technology Center, there was several. This has been an issue for a while, obviously, and there were some companies that looking at like pneumatic uh, tubes and tunneling and all that stuff to kind of alleviate the traffic around the port. Has that materialized at all?
No, I think I might have seen some of those concepts similar to like the Las Vegas, Los Angeles tube. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, the kind they used to have at banks and stuff like that. Uh, no, that's not. We haven't really seen that really take off because of the cost.
Yeah.
There has been some. There has been some studies as well on maglev type of rail systems where they're using that magnetic elevation kind of thing with autonomous train systems to move containers off different places, but the internal the ROI just hasn't been there yet on that.
So, John, what does the Chief Commercial Officer of the Port of Houston do?
I'm the number one sales guy at the port. So all the customers that use those ships and bring stuff in and out of the port, I ensure that those customers that we're talking to them, we're answering their questions, ask them to do more, and I support that business and continue trying to drive more business in and out of this port.
So, leading Port Houston means navigating a truly international ecosystem. So, tell us a little bit about your day to day. What happens in your world on a day to day basis?
Well, if I could turn this camera, which we tried, it doesn't work because of the sunlight coming in through my window, you'd see a beautiful ship, a deep water ship, loading and offloading goods. And that's really what makes the Texas economy run. We contribute, the activities here along the greater Port of Houston, the Houston Ship Channel contribute to about 19% of the Texas GDP, which is an enormous number. We're talking more than 3 million jobs across the United States, more than 1.5 million jobs just right here in the state of Texas, nearly $1 trillion to the U.S. economy, if not more. Those figures are a couple years old, or 2022 numbers. So we've been growing since then. So it's just a tremendous engine. But it's really about those goods and the goods that come on and off those ships and the men and women that make it happen every day. From the men and women that are actually working on the dock, offloading those ships, loading those vessels, running that cargo to and from the wharf. And then it's also all the workforce and everybody that works behind the scenes, whether in an office or in a warehouse or driving a truck or running a locomotive or pushing letters of credit or facilitating documentation or negotiating these trade transactions and these purchases overseas or selling things overseas. It's a tremendous engine, and it doesn't stop. It's a 24/7 operation that does not sleep. While we're all in bed getting ready for the next day work, there's men and women out there working, whether it's rain or shine. They're keeping this economy moving every day. It's really an amazing scene.
More reliable than the post office.
Yeah, I guess in some ways, perhaps. Yeah.
And you guys are really at the intersection of business and policy and global trade. Tell us a little bit about some of the issues that you are affected with on a daily basis.
It's just the range, it's the whole gamut. Sometimes it's a regulatory environment, sometimes it's policy, sometimes it's currency, foreign currencies, and how things shift. Other times it might be the weather. It might be things like that. It might be infrastructure. To us, it's really the big thing that we try to stay out in front of the most, which we do have a greater degree of control over, is our infrastructure, trying to ensure that we've got the right kind of capacity to handle this amazing growth and to be able to manage all the international trade that the state of Texas and our greater region moves on. So, there's just a number of different challenges that kind of come our way, and we're just always having to keep vigilant and make sure that we can stay in front of it.
So I know that there's lots of geopolitical shifts and changes all the time. How does that affect the Port of Houston?
Well, it is impactful. It impacts a lot of things when it comes to international trade. Volumes. You have wild swings. Like, for example, this year, what we've seen is a wild swing all the way through the month of July. As a matter of fact, just looking back at the month of July and August, we saw our biggest months in our entire history just during that period of time, because in the month of July, it was people preloading and pre-moving things before some of these tariffs were going to take effect. So those things meant that we had to scramble. We had to make sure. It was just really tough months when you're managing a surge of 20% versus the same month last year. It means it's extremely busy, right? So trying to manage these surges and trying to manage these movements is a challenge in and of itself. But the fantastic thing about us here in Texas is that we're quite resilient. The type of products, the type of commodities that we export, that we make, we grow, we manufacture, are staples in everyday's lives. Where a lot of times, they just got to keep moving. In the case of imports, it's largely consumer goods that are imported into the market because of our huge and growing population. So a lot of these things keep moving. It's not a said our volumes are up year to date. Our volumes just at our own facilities, at the public facilities that we own and operate, we're up 5% year on year, which is tremendous when you consider the rest of the country, which is actually slipping and has these lower numbers, mainly because of this resilience in the type of commodities that we trade in here in the state of Texas, be it energy products or be it petrochemical or other types of things, which are really important in manufacturing processes around the world. But but that growth still is something we need to be really vigilant of, and it's something that we pay a lot of close attention to. And we're out in Washington D.C. every day. We have a team out there representing us, and our CEO travels often out to D.C. and engages directly with the White House and his cabinet in order to keep things moving here in the state of Texas. So it's really about really staying alert and vigilant at all times.
And you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but the Port of Houston is often described as the gateway to America's energy capital. How does the port strengthen our local community here in Houston?
Well, I'm glad you asked about the community because we're on the east side, right along the Houston Ship Channel, which is essentially an extension of the Buffalo Bayou. That's how it started back in 1835 with the first deepening project. Project One was taking that Buffalo Bayou and dredging it down. Today, we're on the 11th project, actually the 12th project, which we just started in deepening it. Now we're this massive, deep waterway here at the Port of Houston. And, representing 19% of the Texas GDP, that's something which we take seriously. And it's something we continue working on.
And I know that you're passionate about Port Houston. And how do you see the role of the port on the global stage evolving in the next 20 years?
Well, Marianne, when you look at just the state of Texas alone, right? Eighth largest economy in the world, larger than the economy of Brazil. It's an enormous economy with a lot of movement that depends quite a bit on international trade. So, as you look at the next 20 years, let's just stop and think about where Houston is today, where it was 20 years ago, where it was 100 years ago, and where it more than likely will be in 20 years, right? And really that speaks to the port. There's a quote which is often used that Houston is the town that built the port that built the city, right? Because a lot of what we see today, such as the Texas Medical Center, right, the largest medical center in the world, came from cotton traders that were exporting cotton to Europe through the Port of Houston and down the Houston Ship Channel to the Port of Galveston, right? So we've always been linked to the city's future and that evolution. And today, if we're representing nearly 1/5 of the Texas GDP and play such a pivotal role as one of the pillars of the Houston economy, looking at what we all see as Houstonians, Houston and what it is going to be and what Texas is going to be 20 years from now, you can bet that the Port of Houston is going to be there helping to support that and drive that and help ensure that we continue prospering for the next 20 years.
And your background, you have a long history in global trade and logistics. What keeps you motivated each day? What makes you excited about coming to work?
A little bit of a history, yeah. It's yeah. Mariana, I would define that as a long history. It's getting on to 40 years in the industry. I got into it. I kind of got a passion for global trade and everything international back when I was in high school. When I was in elementary school, it was my dad really and his career. I
What did
lived
he do?
I lived quite a bit overseas. He was a U.S. diplomat. He was with the U.S. Foreign Service, and from a young age, at the age of 3, we moved out of California and started his international career when I was 3 years old, and attending international schools and American schools all over the world. I got this exposure to this whole other side of things. I ended up graduating high school at the American School in Islamabad, Pakistan. I'm not Pakistani, but I have a lot of friends that are. I love the culture, but being exposed to all these international cultures and then all the men and women that were in these careers that my classmates, their parents going to their houses and spending class trips and things like that, and getting to know these folks really made me a person who appreciated global affairs and global trade and internationalism. And that's why I went in and pursued a career in international business, right? I was thinking international relations, but I went international business. And then just in the form of an internship with a customs house broker, I kind of went into this sort of side of the business with supply chain, logistics, transportation, international trade, and it's been a beautiful career for going on 38 years now, and it's been rewarding. It's opened me up to meet so many people, and I've visited so many countries, and I've learned so many things. I love everything to do with international and global affairs and global trade, and it's just, I would say, it's in my blood. I just love it.
Well, John, it's our privilege to have you on the show today. I know that many people might be thinking, can I go see the port? What does it look like?
Absolutely.
I'm sure you have some port tours that go on.
Yeah, we do. We do. I think there's a lot of folks. I think we've done about 2 million visitors on our boat tour. We have a free boat ride down the Houston Ship Channel to get to know the port, with a tour and a good speakers that describe the port and the history of the port and how it's sort of evolved over the last 150 years or so, a couple hundred years, and it's really great. So that's one way to do it. It's just coming down, and then it is a restricted area. But if you have a group or you have a special group, you can always apply to get on the boat and maybe have a special time set up for you. I can't make any promises, but we do have a boat tour. You can contact them and set up a tour and get to know the port a little bit. We do love having the public and hosting the public. You had talked about community earlier, Marianne. I don't think I went in depth into that question well enough, but being on the east side and working on the east side of town, we're right where we start, basically where the 610 loop is on the east side of town. If you think of the Galleria, we're just on that opposite side where industry is, and up and down this area there are a ton of historic communities. There's a lot of folks that live out here that mainly live and work along the port and in the petrochemical sector. So we've got a lot of different initiatives where we work together with local elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. We build parks, we beautify areas, we do trash cleanups, we do oyster reef restorations, we do all kinds of things that we do. And now basically we have a new initiative called Anchored in Action, led by our chairman, Rick Campo, where we're now reaching out to all the industries along the ship channel to say, hey, how do we work together to really create and bring some impactful community type of initiatives that really can make a significant impact on people's lives. So doing things clean, doing things safely, creating jobs, creating economic prosperity, those are all the things that we try to do as good neighbors and as good people working here in these communities where we work. But I'm really, really glad that you asked me that question, Marianne, because it's such an important part of what we do here.
It is, and I know members of the World Affairs Council are really excited to learn more about the Port of Houston and maybe go out and take a visit. And I'm sure they can reach you through your website to schedule something like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have an area where you could click and make reservations. You can look at the calendar. Naturally, the summertime, it gets booked up pretty quick because of all the school applications and families taking their folks out. But yeah, it's really easy to make a reservation. You just scroll down the calendar and choose a date and time and get on the boat and do a little tour.
Well, for our listeners who are interested in all things global affairs, go visit the Port of Houston. Go say hi to John. I'm sure he'll welcome you warmly. And thank you, John, for joining us today.
Well, thanks, Marianne. I think what you do is so important. The World Affairs Council is so well recognized for bringing people together, making the world a smaller place. And thanks for what you do here in Houston as well.
Thank you again for joining us, John. Thank you for joining us on the Greater Loop.